I was recently contacted by synthesizer enthusiast, product designer and confirmed Frenchman Christian, who asked me if I would be interested in demonstrating a product that he's developed, which is this here that I have in my hand. It's the Arp-Sync by Valpower, is the name of his company. You can get this from his store, a link to which is in the description down below. And this is a device that is designed to convert USB MIDI to 5-volt pulse trigger signals suitable for driving arpeggiators on older instruments such as the Roland Juno 60. I think it should be able to drive the sequencer on the JX3P I've got here, and I'm trying to think of a couple of other things that I might be able to get it to trigger as well around the studio here. So what I'm going to do now is have a go at hooking this up and let's see what we can do with it. Okay, so I thought I would start by testing it with the Juno 60, which I believe is what it's designed primarily to work with. I've got USB here providing power to the unit and the MIDI information eventually. That's connected to the PC. This is a plug and play device, so all I had to do was plug it in and it started up itself, set itself up running. You can see on here we've got a power indicator, so we can tell that it's receiving power from the PC. We've got a sync indicator which should flash once we send MIDI data through to this. Then up the top here we have the sync out, which is just a 1/4 inch jack socket going through the cable here up to the arpeggio trigger in on the Juno 60. I've got the arpeggiator switched on, I've got the hold button held down, and I've already pressed a chord on here. So let's go over to the PC, where I've got a program here called Seek24, which is basically just a dead simple MIDI sequencer program. And I've got this set up with just MIDI notes across C4. Of course, this device only provides a trigger pulse for every MIDI event or MIDI note that it receives. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what notes you set this to play. As long as it sends a MIDI note, you should get a pulse. So, if we press play, we can hear there it's set to the Microsoft MIDI output, and if we select here in the options the Arp-Sync, which is registered on there, let's see if that will work. Success! Okay, now I've got the Juno set up with a kind of a synth drum sound, and it's triggering a kind of a rhythm, as you can hear. And on here you can see all that's happening is we're getting a triggering of the arpeggiator with every note, which means that unlike just having it simply synced, you can do some more interesting kind of rhythmic tricks with it, like I've got set up here. Okay, so it works perfectly with the Juno. Let me see now if I can get it to work with something else. I'll see if I can get it to work maybe with the 6-track. I think that should work, so I'll be back momentarily. Okay, I've just tried to set up the trigger with the 6-track, and it brings up an interesting point. It wouldn't work with this. Not that it necessarily should have done, because it's designed to work with Roland equipment anyway, but that brings me onto a point nicely. I looked up why it wasn't working and found on these forums that you require a pulse that has to be up to 20 milliseconds, there you go, 20 milliseconds long, both high and low. The Arp-Sync, I've discovered from Christian, the bloke who developed it, the trigger signal is only 2 milliseconds long. Now that's obviously not long enough to drive the 6-track, not that that's necessarily an issue, because I think you can do that with MIDI anyway, but that does mean that you can really push the tempo up with the number of triggers that you have per bar with this pretty much to a ridiculous level. But right now, in the meantime, I've got it set up with the JX3P with the sequencer on here. So if I press start on there, I've got this hooked into the sequencer trigger input, and then if I press start on the sequencer over here again. There we go. So there we go, it works with the JX3P as well. Let's try and hook it back up to the Juno and really push up the tempo to see what this thing can do. I've set this up to 128th notes, which is obviously quite fast. Let's see if that will work. Seems to work perfectly. Let's push up the tempo, see how fast this thing can go. I don't think I've ever heard a Juno make a noise like that before. You see the thing here is going mental. This is at 376 BPM at 128th notes. That is quite impressive. Didn't miss a beat. So there you have it, the Arp-Sync by Valpower. It's one of those pieces of kit that does one thing, and one thing very well. Pretty much, it looks like anything that you could trigger with a 909 or a DR110 or a 707 or something like that, you will be able to trigger with this. And in addition to that, you'll be able to do much more complex stuff with this, because of course, with a 909, you're not going to be able to set up a 128th note sequence at 300 BPM and have it triggering out. It just won't be able to do it. Whereas this thing seems to be able to do that kind of stuff, which, as you see, unlocks a whole realm of kind of weird Game Boy sounds that otherwise you would be unable to get out of these kind of instruments. One final thing, of course, is this thing is very compact. You can see there it is compared to a standard guitar pedal size thing. It really is quite tiny, really. So it's a sleek design. And of course you won't just be able to use it with old Roland gear, because this kind of technology has had some kind of a renaissance recently with stuff like the Volca range. You can see there we've got the sync in and sync out. That's exactly the same style of trigger sync that you would use from the Arp-Sync. So let me just show you the store quickly. Here we go, this is the Valpower store. On here we have the Arp-Sync. It's retailing for $45, not euros, even though it's in France, it's dollars. I don't know if that's just recognising where I'm from. That means in pounds, that's about 35 at the moment, I think. And other products that he's got include a USB to CV and gate, which is a nice little product by the looks of it. It's even cheaper, that's $40, which is £30 roughly. And you can see that works in a similar way, USB to outputs. So this is the main reason why I decided that I would say yes and I would demonstrate this product. But when Christian contacted me, is that I like the idea of these cheap, practical solutions to problems with old school synthesizers. More of this kind of stuff that's on the market, the better really. It shakes up the people like Kenton who are doing really good kit, but for hundreds of pounds. This, you can get something that will do USB to CV and gate for £31. So there you go, that's the device, the Arp-Sync by Valpower. If you've got any questions about it, just let me know, but otherwise I will catch you next time. Cheers.